My aunt told everyone I was just after the money, then screamed when she found out Grandma left me everything. The funeral was 3 days ago. I'd flown in from Portland, taken unpaid time off from the hospital where I work night shifts, and slept on my friend Becca's couch because I couldn't afford a hotel. My Aunt Diane showed up in head-to-toe Chanel, her third husband trailing behind. She made a scene at the reception. Loud enough for everyone to hear, she announced that I'd barely visited Grandma in her final years, that I was only there because I wanted the house, the savings, the jewelry. Some people, she said, staring directly at me, only show up when there's something to gain. I didn't respond, just stood there holding my paper plate while distant cousins whispered. The truth? I'd visited Grandma every Sunday for 5 years. I'd moved her into assisted living, sorted her medications, attended every doctor's appointment. My aunt had sent a Christmas card. Once. When Grandma's dementia got bad, she'd forget my name but remember my perfume. She'd light up when I walked in, even if she thought I was her sister or some friend from 1952. I never corrected her, just sat and listened to her stories, the same ones every week. Meanwhile, Aunt Diane posted Facebook tributes about being an amazing daughter. The comments overflowed with condolences about her devastating loss. The lawyer's office was downtown, all dark wood and leather chairs. Aunt Diane arrived early, practically vibrating with anticipation. She'd already started planning. New kitchen, European vacation, maybe a boat. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, opened the will and started reading. Standard stuff at first. Then he got to the big one. To my granddaughter, who showed up every Sunday without fail, who never made me feel like a burden, I leave my entire estate. The silence was deafening. Aunt Diane's face went from confused to red to purple. That's impossible, she hissed. I'm her daughter. There's more, Mr. Patterson interrupted. He continued reading. To my daughter Diane, who visited once in 5 years, who only called when she needed money, I leave this message. You taught me that blood doesn't make you family. Showing up does. My aunt stood so fast her chair fell backward. She started screaming about fraud, about manipulation, threatening lawsuits and criminal charges. I just sat there as Mr. Patterson handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a letter in Grandma's shaky handwriting, detailing every broken promise, every missed birthday, every time my aunt had asked for money and disappeared. As my aunt was escorted out still screaming, Mr. Patterson mentioned one more thing. There's a separate trust your grandmother established 6 months ago. Quite substantial. But there's a condition attached. He glanced at his assistant, who quietly closed the conference room door. Your aunt filed a conservatorship petition 3 weeks before your grandmother died, he continued, claiming incompetence. If it had gone through, everything would have gone to her as legal guardian. My blood ran cold. Your grandmother knew, Mr. Patterson said. She left evidence. Documentation. Recordings. Things that suggest your aunt's involvement went beyond legal maneuvering. He slid a flash drive across the table. Before you accept this inheritance, you need to know what's on here, because once you do, there's no going back. I stared at the small black device sitting between us. My hand trembled as I reached for it. What kind of evidence? I asked. Mr. Patterson's expression didn't change. The kind that could send someone to prison. I picked up the flash drive. It felt impossibly heavy. Your grandmother was sharper than anyone gave her credit for, he continued. Even with the dementia, she had moments of absolute clarity. She used those moments wisely. How long have you known about this? 6 months. She came to my office one afternoon, completely lucid, said she needed to protect you from something terrible. We spent 3 hours going through everything she documented. I clutched the flash drive tighter. And you waited until now to tell me? Those were her instructions. She wanted you to have the choice. Accept the inheritance as is, or see what's really been happening. Behind him, the assistant shifted uncomfortably. There's more, Mr. Patterson added. Your grandmother installed hidden cameras in her apartment 4 months ago. She recorded everything. My stomach dropped. Everything? Every conversation, every visit, every phone call she could capture. He paused, including several with your aunt. The room felt smaller suddenly. Outside, I could hear my aunt still yelling in the hallway, her husband trying to calm her down. I need to see it, I said. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly. I figured you would. But understand, once you watch those recordings, you can't unknow what you'll learn. And depending on what you decide to do with that information, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Your aunt has powerful friends. Her husband's family owns half the commercial real estate in this city. If you pursue this, they'll come at you with everything they have. I thought about Grandma sitting alone in that apartment, confused and scared, installing cameras because she knew something was wrong, knew her own daughter was planning something. I want to see everything. Mr. Patterson handed me a folder. These are the access codes. I'd recommend reviewing the materials privately, with someone you trust. I stood, legs shaky. Is that it? Not quite. He pulled out another document. Your grandmother also left you this. It was a handwritten letter, sealed in an envelope with my name on it. Her handwriting was steadier here, written before the dementia had gotten bad. Read it before you watch the recordings, Mr. Patterson said quietly. She wanted you to. I left the office through a side exit, avoiding my aunt who was still arguing with the security guard in the lobby. My rental car was parked 2 blocks away. I made it there before my hands started shaking too badly to hold the keys. Becca found me sitting in the driver's seat 20 minutes later, staring at the sealed envelope. Hey, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. I saw your aunt being escorted out. Figured you might need backup. I handed her the flash drive. Grandma left evidence. About my aunt. Becca's eyes widened. Evidence of what? I don't know yet. I turned the envelope over in my hands. But it's bad enough that the lawyer warned me about consequences. You going to open it? I tore the seal. Inside were 3 pages, front and back, in Grandma's careful script. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you know about the recordings. I'm sorry to burden you with this, but there's no one else I trust. Your aunt has been stealing from me for 3 years. Not just money, though there's plenty of that. She's been manipulating my medications, confusing me deliberately, trying to make me seem incompetent. I started noticing the gaps 6 months ago. Days I couldn't remember. Times I'd wake up and hours had passed. At first I thought it was just the dementia getting worse, but then I'd find my pill bottles rearranged. Medications I didn't recognize mixed in with my regular prescriptions. I became paranoid, I'll admit. Started writing everything down. Every pill I took, every visitor, every phone call. The patterns emerged quickly. Your aunt visits every Tuesday afternoon. By Tuesday evening, I can barely remember my own name. It wears off by Wednesday morning, but by then, I've lost another day. I confronted her once, asked her directly what she was giving me. She cried, said I was confused, that the dementia was making me paranoid. Then she called my doctor and tried to have me committed. That's when I knew I needed proof. I installed the cameras myself, hired a private investigator with money I'd hidden from her, documented everything. It took weeks to gather what I needed, and some days I barely remembered why I was doing it, but I kept notes. Reminded myself every morning of what I was fighting for. The truth is worse than I imagined. She's not just stealing money or trying to have me declared incompetent. She's actively trying to kill me, slowly, carefully, in ways that would look natural for an elderly woman with dementia. I'm telling you this because you need to understand what you're up against. Your aunt is desperate. Her third husband is bankrupt. They've been living off credit and my money for 2 years. If she doesn't get the inheritance, they lose everything. The recordings will show you everything. What she's been giving me, how she's been forging my signature, the conversations she's had with her husband about accelerating my decline. I won't lie to you, sweetheart. Going forward with this will destroy what's left of our family. Your cousins will turn on you. Friends will take sides. The scandal will be enormous. But if you don't, she'll get away with it. And she'll do it again. Maybe to someone else's grandmother. Maybe to you someday when you're old and vulnerable. The choice is yours. I've left you everything you need to pursue justice if you want it. But I'll love you just as much if you choose to walk away and live your life. Just promise me one thing. Whatever you decide, don't let her make you small. Don't let her steal your joy the way she tried to steal my life. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry for leaving you with this burden. Forever your grandma. I read it 3 times before I could speak. What does it say? Becca asked gently. I handed it to her. Watched her face change as she read. Holy shit, she whispered. Your aunt was poisoning her? That's what Grandma thought. Says there's proof on the recordings. Becca looked at the flash drive in her hand like it was radioactive. You have to go to the police. With what? A letter from a woman with dementia? They'll say she was confused, paranoid, that I'm making this up to justify the inheritance. Then what are you going to do? I started the car. Watch the recordings. All of them. Then decide. We drove back to Becca's apartment in silence. She lived in a converted warehouse in the arts district, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Her girlfriend was at work, giving us privacy. I set up my laptop on the kitchen table. The flash drive had dozens of video files, organized by date. I started with the oldest one, from 4 months ago. The video opened on Grandma's living room, the angle wide enough to capture the entire space. Grandma sat in her favorite chair, doing a crossword puzzle. She looked good, alert, more like herself than I'd seen her in months. Then the door opened, and my aunt walked in. Mom, hi! Grandma looked up, surprised. Diane, what are you doing here? Can't a daughter visit her mother? My aunt leaned down to kiss Grandma's cheek. I brought your favorite cookies. They chatted for a few minutes. Normal stuff. Grandma asked about my aunt's husband, about her kids. My aunt answered with practiced ease. Then, oh, I almost forgot. Dr. Reynolds called. He wanted me to adjust your medications. Grandma frowned. I just saw him last week. He didn't mention anything. Well, you know how forgetful you've been, Mom. Maybe you just don't remember. I remember perfectly well. We discussed keeping everything the same. My aunt's smile tightened. Mom, please, we've talked about this. You need to trust the doctors. She pulled a pill bottle from her purse. I watched Grandma's expression shift from confusion to something else. Fear. I don't want to take new pills, Grandma said firmly. I want to call Dr. Reynolds myself. The phone is right there. Call him. My aunt gestured toward the phone on the side table. Grandma reached for it. Her hand was steady. My aunt's mask slipped for just a second. Her jaw clenched. Then she forced the smile back. Actually, you know what? Let me call him. Save you the trouble. She picked up the phone and dialed. Had an entire conversation with someone she called Dr. Reynolds, explaining that Mom was being difficult about her medication adjustments. Except I knew Dr. Reynolds' voice. I'd attended dozens of appointments with him. That wasn't him on the phone. Grandma seemed to realize it too. She sat back in her chair, watching my aunt with narrow eyes. Take 2 of these now, my aunt said, holding out pills and a glass of water. I'll check on you tomorrow. No. Mom. I said no, Diane. Get out of my house. My aunt's expression went cold. We both know you're not competent to make these decisions anymore. If you won't cooperate, I'll have to file for conservatorship. Is that what you want? The threat hung in the air. Finally, Grandma took the pills, swallowed them with water. My aunt watched her do it, then smiled. Good. I'll see you next week. She left. The door closed. Grandma sat perfectly still for about 30 seconds. Then she stood, walked calmly to the bathroom, and I heard her vomit. She'd hidden the pills in her cheek. I paused the video, hands shaking. That was just the first visit, Becca said quietly. There are 40 more files on here. I clicked on the next one. It was worse. Over the course of weeks, I watched my aunt systematically gaslight Grandma, convince her she was losing her mind, mix unknown pills in with her regular medications when Grandma wasn't looking, make phone calls to lawyers about conservatorship while Grandma slept in the next room. In one video, my aunt's husband appeared. They spoke in low voices, thinking Grandma was asleep. How much longer? He asked. Couple of months. She's declining faster now. The new dosage is working. You're sure it won't show up in an autopsy? Who's going to request an autopsy? Old woman with dementia dies peacefully in her sleep. It happens every day. They laughed. I had to stop the video. Ran to Becca's bathroom and threw up. When I came back, Becca had her phone out. I'm calling the police. Wait. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Not yet. Are you insane? You just watched them admit to murder. Attempted murder. She didn't succeed. Only because your grandma was smart enough to fight back. I sank into a chair. My whole body felt numb. If we go to the police now, what do we have? Videos that could be dismissed as a confused old woman's paranoia. A letter that could be written off the same way. We need more. More? What more do you need? Proof of what she was giving Grandma. Medical records showing the unexplained symptoms. Something concrete that ties my aunt to deliberate harm. Becca stared at me. You're thinking like a nurse. I am a nurse. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. No room for doubt. No way for her to wiggle out of it. I spent the rest of the day watching videos and taking notes. Documented every visit. Every pill I saw my aunt give Grandma. Every conversation about money, about conservatorship, about how to make the whole thing look natural. By evening, I had a timeline. My aunt had started stealing small amounts 3 years ago. Just a few hundred here and there, forging Grandma's signature on checks. When Grandma started getting suspicious, my aunt began the medication manipulation, making Grandma seem more confused than she was, creating evidence of incompetence. The conservatorship petition had been the final move. Once my aunt had legal control, she could drain the accounts openly, and Grandma would die quietly in some nursing home where no one paid attention. Except Grandma had figured it out. Set her trap perfectly. The last video file was dated 3 weeks before Grandma died. She was alone in her apartment, speaking directly to the camera. Hi, sweetheart. If you're watching this, then I'm gone and you have all the evidence. I hope it's enough. Her voice was weak but clear. She knew she was dying. I stopped trying to fight the pills 2 weeks ago. I'm tired. And honestly, I'd rather go on my own terms than let her put me in some facility. Tears ran down her face. But I needed to make sure she didn't win, that she didn't get to profit from my death. So I changed the will. Moved my money, set everything up so you'd have what you need to stop her. She leaned closer to the camera. I'm sorry to put this on you, but you're strong enough. You've always been strong enough. Don't let her scare you. Don't let her make you doubt yourself. She smiled. That familiar smile I'd seen every Sunday for 5 years. I love you. Now go get her. The video ended. I sat in silence for a long time. What are you going to do? Becca finally asked. I ejected the flash drive and tucked it in my pocket. I'm going to do exactly what she asked. The next morning, I made an appointment with a detective friend from the hospital. His name was Leo, and he'd worked with our ER on domestic violence cases. I trusted him. We met at a coffee shop far from my aunt's neighborhood. I need your advice, I said, sliding the flash drive across the table. Unofficially, Leo raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. My grandmother died 3 weeks ago. Before she did, she left me evidence that my aunt was trying to kill her. His expression shifted immediately. Professional. What kind of evidence? Video recordings, 4 months worth. My aunt admitting to forging signatures, stealing money, and poisoning Grandma to make her seem incompetent. Leo picked up the flash drive. You've watched them? All of them. And? It's exactly what she said it was. Clear admission of intent, conspiracy with her husband, discussion of making it look like natural causes. Leo was quiet for a moment. Then, why come to me? Why not go straight to the department? Because I want to do this right. No mistakes. No technicalities she can use to get out of it. Smart. He pocketed the flash drive. Give me 48 hours. I'll review everything and put together a case file. If it's as solid as you say, we'll bring in the DA. I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion. Thank you. Leo touched my hand briefly. Your grandmother was lucky to have you. Those 48 hours felt like an eternity. I went through the motions at work, checking vitals and changing IVs while my mind raced through everything that could go wrong. My aunt could flee. Her husband's family could pressure the DA to drop the case. The videos could be deemed inadmissible. On the third day, Leo called. We need to meet. Bring Mr. Patterson. My stomach dropped. Why? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But this is bigger than either of us anticipated. We met at the DA's office that afternoon. Mr. Patterson brought 2 associates. Leo had the entire financial crimes unit with him. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Victoria, who looked like she ate defense attorneys for breakfast. I've reviewed the evidence, she said without preamble. It's extraordinary. We have video confession, pattern of behavior, financial documentation. This is the strongest elder abuse case I've seen in 20 years. So you'll prosecute? I asked. Absolutely. But I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Your aunt will hire the best lawyers money can buy. This will be ugly. Public. Your entire family history will be dissected in court. I understand. Victoria smiled grimly. Good. Because we're not just charging her with theft and fraud. We're going for attempted murder. The room went silent. The medical examiner reviewed the footage. Victoria continued. Identified 3 separate substances your aunt administered that had no legitimate medical purpose. Combined with your grandmother's medical records showing unexplained symptoms during the exact time frame of these visits, we have a strong case. Mr. Patterson leaned forward. What about the husband? Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, elder abuse. He's on the recordings admitting to knowledge and participation. I thought about my aunt's husband, always smiling blandly in the background, counting money he hadn't earned. When? I asked. We arrest them tomorrow morning. I wanted you to know first so you could prepare. Prepare for what? The fallout. Your family will be contacted. The media will pick this up. Be ready. I drove to my aunt's house that evening, not to warn her, just to see it one last time before everything changed. It was a massive colonial in the wealthiest part of town, bought with money my aunt had stolen from Grandma over the years. The driveway held a Mercedes and a BMW. Through the windows, I could see crystal chandeliers, all of it built on lies. I wondered if Grandma had ever been invited here, if my aunt had ever felt guilty, even for a moment. Probably not. I took a photo of the house, sent it to Becca with a message. Last night before the storm. She replied immediately. You okay? Getting there. The next morning, I was at the hospital when Leo called. It's done. Both in custody. I excused myself to the supply closet and called Becca. They arrested her. Holy shit. How do you feel? I didn't know how to answer that. Relief, terror, grief, satisfaction. All of it mixed together until I couldn't separate one feeling from another. I feel like Grandma can rest now, I finally said. The news broke that afternoon. Local station first, then it spread. Prominent real estate family charged with elder abuse and attempted murder. My phone started ringing immediately. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Grandma's friends from church. People who'd been at the funeral. Who'd listened to my aunt's lies about me being a gold digger. I didn't answer any of them. The only call I took was from Mr. Patterson. Your aunt posted bail 2 hours ago, he said. $500,000. Her husband's family put up their commercial properties as collateral. So she's free, for now, but the judge imposed strict conditions. No contact with you, no access to any of your grandmother's assets, and she has to surrender her passport. That night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. I'm your family. You're throwing me away over money. I showed it to Leo the next day. Violation of the no contact order, he said immediately. Forward it to me. Will it matter? Every violation matters. We're building a pattern. The text kept coming over the next week. Sometimes from my aunt's number, sometimes from numbers I didn't recognize. Always the same themes. I was ungrateful. I'd manipulated Grandma. I was tearing the family apart over greed. I documented every single one and sent them to Leo. Then my cousins started posting on social media. Long threads about family loyalty. About how I'd stolen their grandmother's money. About how their mother was innocent and being railroaded by a vindictive niece who wanted everything for herself. The comment sections filled with people who didn't know the whole story, taking sides based on whoever posted most convincingly. I didn't respond, just archived everything. Becca found me one night scrolling through the worst of them, tears streaming down my face. Why are you doing this to yourself? She asked gently. Because I need to remember why I'm doing this. When it gets hard, when I want to quit, I need to remember that these people chose her. Even without knowing the truth, they chose to believe the worst about me. That says more about them than it does about you. I know, but it still hurts. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I tried to return to normal life, worked my shifts, paid my bills, pretended my world wasn't imploding. Mr. Patterson called regularly with updates. The DA was building an airtight case. They'd subpoenaed medical records, financial statements, phone records, everything. Your aunt's lawyers are already trying to negotiate a plea deal, he told me. What kind of deal? Return half the stolen money, plead to lesser charges, minimal jail time. Absolutely not. That's what I told them. The DA agrees. We're going to trial. 3 weeks before the hearing, someone broke into Becca's apartment. We'd been at dinner when it happened. Came home to find the door kicked in, the place ransacked. Did they take anything? The responding officer asked. I looked around. My laptop was still there. Becca's jewelry, the TV. Then I realized the folder with copies of Grandma's letter was gone. The backup flash drive I'd hidden in my suitcase. Gone. They took the evidence. I told Leo when he arrived. He didn't seem concerned. We have the originals. Everything's been submitted to the DA. This was just intimidation. But it worked. I couldn't sleep that night. Kept imagining someone watching the apartment, waiting for another chance. Becca's girlfriend installed security cameras the next day. Got a deadbolt for the door. But the damage was done. I felt violated. Unsafe. Come stay with me and Hannah, Becca offered. At least until the trial is over. I refused. I'm not going to let them scare me off. But I was scared. Terrified, actually. Not just of another break-in, but of what my aunt was capable of. She'd tried to kill her own mother. What would she do to me? 2 weeks before the hearing, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then, you should be careful walking to your car at night. Lots of things can happen in parking garages. I hung up and immediately called Leo. That's a threat, he said. I'm assigning protective detail. You can't be serious. Your aunt is facing 20 years. Her husband is looking at 15. They're desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. For the next 2 weeks, I had an off-duty officer shadow me to and from work. It should have made me feel safer. Instead, it made everything feel more real, more dangerous. The night before the preliminary hearing, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Grandma, about all those Sundays together, the way she'd smile when I walked in, how she'd held my hand during the bad days. I wondered if she'd known it would come to this, if she'd understood what she was asking of me when she left that letter. Probably. Grandma had always understood more than people gave her credit for. The courtroom was packed, media in the back rows, family members on both sides, my aunt's lawyers in expensive suits, the DA's team looking sharp and prepared. I sat behind the prosecution table, hands folded in my lap. My aunt was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair was unwashed, no makeup. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When she saw me, her eyes filled with hate, pure, undiluted hatred. I stared back, didn't look away. The judge entered and everyone stood. What followed was 3 hours of legal arguments I barely understood. Motions, objections, discussions about admissibility and precedent. But when Victoria started presenting evidence, I understood perfectly. She played the videos. Not all of them, just enough to establish the pattern. My aunt's voice filled the courtroom, talking about dosages and timing and making it look natural. Several people in the gallery gasped. My cousin sat frozen, faces pale. The judge's expression never changed, just watched everything with careful attention. When it was over, the defense attorney stood. Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. These videos could have been doctored. The medications mentioned could have been legitimate prescriptions. Without the decedent here to testify. The decedent left extensive documentation, Victoria interrupted, including a detailed letter explaining exactly what was happening, written during a period when her medical records show she was lucid and competent. A letter from a woman with dementia, a woman whose competency was deliberately undermined by the defendant. We have medical experts ready to testify that the symptoms of dementia shown in medical records correlate exactly with the dates of the defendant's visits. The defense attorney sat down, looking frustrated. The judge reviewed his notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I'm binding this over for trial. Bail is revoked. The courtroom erupted. My aunt started screaming. Her husband tried to stand and was forced back down by court officers. This is a travesty! My aunt shrieked as they led her out. I'm her daughter! Her daughter! She was my mother! The judge banged his gavel. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. But my aunt couldn't stop. You'll pay for this. All of you. She was crazy and confused and you're all believing her lies. They dragged her out still screaming. I sat perfectly still, watching them take her away. Victoria touched my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. Couldn't speak. This is just the beginning, she warned. Trial won't be for another few months. It's going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. The media coverage exploded. Cable news picked it up. Daughter tries to murder mother for inheritance. It became a nationwide story. My face was everywhere. People recognized me at the grocery store, at work. Some offered sympathy. Others accused me of lying, of fabricating evidence, of being motivated by greed. I stopped reading comments online, deleted social media, just focused on getting through each day. Work became my sanctuary. In the ER, nobody cared about my family drama. They just needed someone to stop the bleeding or start an IV or hold their hand during a panic attack. I was good at that. Had always been good at showing up when it mattered. 3 months later, the trial began. I'd been prepped extensively by Victoria and her team. How to answer questions, how to stay calm under cross-examination, how to handle my aunt's lawyers trying to paint me as a gold digger who manipulated a confused old woman. They're going to come at you hard, Victoria warned. Attack your character. Suggest you coerced your grandmother into changing the will. You need to stay composed. Easier said than done. The first week was jury selection. 12 people who'd never met grandma or my aunt or me. 12 people who'd decide whether my aunt went to prison. I studied their faces. Tried to gauge who might be sympathetic, who might be skeptical. One woman, maybe 60, reminded me of grandma. Same soft eyes. Same careful way of listening. I hoped she made it through selection. She did. Week 2 was opening arguments. Victoria stood before the jury and laid out the entire case. Calm, methodical. She showed them the videos, walked them through the timeline, explained how my aunt had systematically stolen from and poisoned her own mother. The defense attorney tried a different approach. This is a family dispute, he said. A daughter concerned about her aging mother. A granddaughter who wanted the inheritance. What you're going to see is a series of unfortunate misunderstandings blown out of proportion by grief and greed. I wanted to scream, but I sat there, hands folded, face neutral. The prosecution called its first witness, Dr. Reynolds, Grandma's actual doctor. He testified that Grandma had been stable on her medications, that there was no medical reason to add or adjust anything, that he'd never called my aunt with new prescriptions. In fact, he said, I noted several times in her chart that I was concerned about unexplained cognitive declines that didn't match the expected progression of her dementia. Did you investigate these concerns? Victoria asked. I ordered additional tests, but by the time we could schedule them, Mrs. Harrison had passed away. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brief. Isn't it true that dementia progression can be unpredictable? In general, yes. But Mrs. Harrison's case showed a very specific pattern. Rapid decline after family visits, then improvement when the visits stopped. Next came the forensic accountant who'd analyzed Grandma's financial records. He'd found $127,000 in forged checks over 3 years, wire transfers to my aunt's accounts, cash withdrawals that corresponded with her visits. The pattern is clear, he testified. Systematic theft disguised as ordinary family financial support. My aunt's lawyer tried to argue that Grandma had given the money willingly. Where's the documentation of these gifts? The accountant replied, if Mrs. Harrison was willingly supporting her daughter, why forge the signatures? Why create false records? The lawyer had no answer. Then came the medical examiner. She'd reviewed Grandma's autopsy and the videos, identified the pills my aunt had been administering as a combination of sedatives and antipsychotics that would create symptoms mimicking severe dementia. In someone who already had mild cognitive impairment, she explained, these medications would create a rapid and dramatic decline, confusion, memory loss, inability to function independently. Could these medications be fatal? Victoria asked. In the doses shown on the video? Potentially yes, especially combined with Mrs. Harrison's existing medications. The risk of respiratory depression, cardiac events, or aspiration would be significantly elevated. The defense attorney stood. But Mrs. Harrison died of natural causes, correct? The death certificate lists cardiac arrest. Yes. But cardiac arrest is what kills everyone eventually. The question is, what caused the cardiac arrest? In Mrs. Harrison's case, the contributing factors are suspicious, but not definitive? Not without blood work done immediately after death, which wasn't performed because no one suspected foul play at the time. The defense attorney seized on this. So you can't definitively say my client caused her mother's death? No, but I can definitively say she administered medications that placed her mother at significant risk of death. It went on like this for weeks. Expert after expert, document after document. I testified on day 12. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking to my own execution. My aunt stared at me the entire time, her eyes burning with rage. Victoria asked me about my relationship with Grandma, about the Sunday visits, the doctor appointments, the hours spent listening to the same stories over and over. Why did you do it? She asked. Visit so faithfully when it must have been exhausting? I looked at the jury. Because she was my grandmother. Because she'd spent my entire childhood showing up for me. It was my turn to show up for her. Did you expect to inherit anything? No, I assumed everything would go to my aunt. She was Grandma's only child. When did you learn about the changed will? At the reading. Same time my aunt did. How did that make you feel? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Surprised, grateful, but mostly sad that Grandma felt she needed to protect me like that. The defense attorney took over for cross-examination. Isn't it true, he began, that you work night shifts at a hospital and struggle financially? I work night shifts because they pay slightly more. And yes, like most nurses, I live paycheck to paycheck. So you needed money? I need money to pay rent and buy groceries, but I've never needed it enough to hurt someone for it. But you knew your grandmother was wealthy? Everyone in the family knew that? And you visited her every single Sunday for 5 years. That's quite dedicated for someone who supposedly expected nothing in return. I met his eyes. I visited because I loved her. Because she raised me when my parents were too busy working. Because she came to every school play and dance recital and graduation. Because she was there. But you must have hoped. I hoped she'd live forever. That's what I hoped. Not for her money. For more time. My voice cracked on the last word. The defense attorney backed off, probably realizing he was making me sympathetic. Victoria stood for redirect. Did you know about the cameras your grandmother installed? No, not until after she died. Did you know she was documenting your aunt's visits? No. So when you visited every Sunday, you had no idea any of this was being recorded? None. You just showed up because you cared about her? Yes. I was excused after 2 hours of testimony, walked back to my seat on shaking legs. The woman who reminded me of Grandma smiled at me from the jury box. I smiled back. The defense put on its case the following week. My aunt didn't testify. Her lawyers probably knew she'd fall apart under cross-examination. Instead, they called character witnesses. Friends who said my aunt was devoted to her mother. Neighbors who'd seen her at Grandma's apartment. Victoria tore them apart on cross. Did you ever accompany the defendant to these visits? No. So you don't know what happened once the door closed? No, but did you review your friend's financial records? Of course not. So you don't know if she was stealing? She wouldn't, but you don't know for certain, do you? No. The defense tried to discredit the videos. Brought in a tech expert who testified they could have been edited. Victoria's expert demolished him. Showed how the metadata proved the videos were continuous, unedited recordings. They tried to suggest Grandma was confused when she wrote her letter. The prosecution brought in a handwriting expert who compared the letter to other documents Grandma had written. The handwriting is consistent. The syntax and vocabulary match her other correspondence. This was written by a lucid individual. By the end of week 4, the defense was out of ammunition. Closing arguments took an entire day. The defense attorney painted my aunt as a concerned daughter trying to help her aging mother. He called the videos cherry-picked moments taken out of context. He suggested I had manipulated Grandma into changing the will. Then Victoria stood for the prosecution's closing. She didn't yell. Didn't need to. She simply walked the jury through everything again. The forged checks, the unauthorized medications, the conversations about accelerating the decline, the letter from a woman who knew exactly what was happening to her. The defense wants you to believe this was a misunderstanding, Victoria said. That Diane was just a daughter trying to help. But the evidence tells a different story. This was calculated, systematic, cruel. She paused, letting that sink in. The defendant didn't just steal her mother's money. She stole her dignity, her clarity, her final years. She turned her mother's own mind against her, made her doubt her own sanity, all so she could drain bank accounts and seize control. Victoria gestured to the empty witness stand. Mrs. Harrison can't be here to tell you what happened, but she left you her voice. On those videos. In that letter. In the medical records that show the pattern of abuse. She turned to the jury. Don't let her death be for nothing. Don't let her daughter get away with this because she's good at pretending to cry. Look at the evidence. Look at what she did. And hold her accountable. The jury deliberated for 2 days. 2 days of sitting in the courthouse hallway, drinking bad coffee, jumping every time the door opened. Finally, the call came. They had a verdict. We filed back into the courtroom. My aunt was brought in, looking exhausted and terrified. The jury foreman stood. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. My aunt collapsed. Her husband started crying. On the counts of elder abuse, fraud, and forgery, we find the defendant guilty. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was hearing. Guilty. On everything. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks out. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Reporters swarmed, but I didn't stop. Just got in Becca's car and let her drive me away. We didn't talk. She just drove to the beach and parked. I got out and walked to the water's edge. For the first time in months, I cried. Huge, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. Not from sadness. Not from relief. From exhaustion. From the weight of carrying this alone for so long. Becca found me an hour later, sitting in the sand. You did it, she said quietly. You got her. Grandma got her? I corrected. I just finished what she started. Sentencing day arrived cold and gray. The courtroom was less crowded this time. Just family, lawyers, and a handful of reporters. The judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement before sentencing. I stood. Your Honor, I don't want to talk about what my aunt did. Everyone knows by now. What I want to talk about is what my grandmother did. I pulled out Grandma's letter, the one from the will reading. She wrote this, knowing she was dying, knowing her own daughter had betrayed her. And even then, even after everything, she didn't want revenge. She wanted justice, and she wanted me to have a choice. I looked at my aunt, who sat with her head down. My grandmother taught me that family isn't just blood. It's showing up. It's being there when things are hard and staying when it would be easier to leave. My aunt never learned that lesson, but I did. I folded the letter carefully. I hope the sentence reflects not just what my aunt tried to do, but what my grandmother overcame, the strength it took to set this in motion while her own mind was being stolen from her. That deserves to be honored. I sat down. The judge was quiet for a moment. Then he began. I've presided over many cases in my career. This one will stay with me. The cruelty displayed here, the calculated nature of the abuse is extraordinary. He looked at my aunt. You took advantage of the one person who should have been able to trust you completely. You stole her money, her dignity, and very nearly her life. You showed no remorse, no empathy, no recognition of the harm you caused. My aunt started to speak. The judge held up his hand. I've heard enough. On the count of attempted murder, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison. On the counts of elder abuse, fraud, and forgery, I sentence you to an additional 10 years to run consecutively. 25 years total. My aunt would be 73 when she got out. Her husband received 12 years as an accomplice. They were led away separately. My aunt didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, broken. Outside the courthouse, reporters wanted statements. Victoria handled it. I just stood beside her numb. Justice was served today, Victoria said. Not just for Mrs. Harrison, but for all elderly victims of abuse who can't speak for themselves. That night, I sat in my apartment alone. The inheritance had been released. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to quit my night shifts, go back to school, buy a house. But all I could think about was Grandma, how she'd planned all this, how she'd protected me even when she couldn't protect herself. I opened my laptop and started going through her estate documents Mr. Patterson had sent. There were accounts I didn't know about, investments, a safety deposit box she'd kept for 40 years, and a letter addressed to me, different from the one about my aunt. This one was older, written before the dementia had started. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've survived what I knew was coming. I've known for years that your aunt was trouble. The signs were always there. The selfishness, the entitlement, the way she looked at me sometimes, calculating what I was worth. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the ugliness that followed, but I knew you were strong enough to handle it. The money is yours now. Use it wisely. Use it to build the life you deserve. Don't let guilt or grief make you small. Remember, I chose you. Not because you needed the money, but because you earned it. Every Sunday, every doctor's appointment, every time you showed up when showing up was hard. That's worth more than any inheritance. Love, Grandma. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and called Becca. Hey, she answered. How are you holding up? I'm good. Actually, I'm better than good. Yeah? Yeah. I'm thinking about buying a house. Want to help me look? She laughed. Absolutely. Where are you thinking? I looked at Grandma's letter again. Somewhere with a big backyard. So I can plant a garden. Grandma always wanted me to have a garden. Then that's what we'll find. I hung up and opened my laptop to real estate listings. For the first time in years, I felt light, like I could breathe again. Grandma had given me more than money. She'd given me permission to live fully, to not carry the weight of her death or my aunt's crimes, to just be free. And that's exactly what I planned to do. 6 months later, I stood in my new backyard, hands in the dirt, planting roses. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, big windows, and a yard that caught the morning sun. I'd quit the night shifts, started a program to become a nurse practitioner, began volunteering at an elder care advocacy group. Every Sunday, I visited Grandma's grave, brought fresh flowers and told her about my week. It felt right, like those Sunday visits had come full circle. I never spoke to my aunt again, didn't visit her in prison, didn't respond to her letters. My cousins eventually reached out. Some apologized. Most just wanted to know if I'd help them financially now that I had money. I kept my distance from all of them, built a new family instead. Friends who showed up, colleagues who cared, people who understood that family is what you make it. On the 1-year anniversary of Grandma's death, I hosted a small gathering. Becca and her girlfriend came, my friend from the hospital, the woman from the jury who'd reminded me of Grandma. We'd become friends after the trial ended. We sat in my garden and shared stories about the people we'd lost, the ones who'd shaped us. Your grandmother would be proud, the former juror said. Her name was Patricia. You think so? I know so. You honored her memory by fighting for justice. But more than that, you honored it by living, by not letting bitterness destroy you. I looked around at the people gathered in my garden, people who showed up, who cared. She taught me that, I said. In the end, that's what she wanted me to learn, that showing up matters more than anything else. Patricia raised her glass. To showing up, we echoed. As the sun set over my garden, painting everything gold, I felt Grandma's presence. Not sad or haunting, just there, the way she'd always been, watching over me, proud of what I'd become, and finally at rest.